Okay, to recap, we're talking about triangle congruence. We're talking about how we can get two triangles to look exactly the same. Okay, and we started off talking about the triangle congruence theorem, side, side, side. So if all three sides of one triangle are congruent to the other three sides of the triangle, then our two triangles are congruent. So again, that means that we only have to know three sides. Okay. We also discussed side angle side, and the most important part about that is that this angle is included, right, in one of the triangles. So I can't have, so here's one of my triangles, here's one of my triangles, and I have a side here, and I have a side here, I have a side here, and I have a side here. So in between my 1 and 2 tick marks, right, I have an angle. Again, it's in between our two sides. It would have to be in between our two tick marks here, right, to make it become a congruent. Again, I should be able to flip, rotate, and move one triangle onto the other, right? So the next one that I want to talk about is something known as angle, side, angle. Okay, and again, the positioning of where your side is very important. So it states if two angles and the included side of one triangle are congruent to two angles and the included side of the other triangle, then our triangles are congruent. So again, take note that one angle, and notice that our side is in between those angles. Again, one angle, and the side is in between. So it's very important that we address that the side is in between our two angles, because our fourth congruent statement on our paper says angle, angle, side. And again, pause the video if you need more time to copy this down. So angle, angle, side. Notice that your side's kind of at the end, and so your side is the non-included side. Okay, now this is where you kind of have to pay attention. Notice that here our side is right by our double angle. And again, here is our side. It is right by our double angle. So I can't just randomly have a side that works. So if I draw two triangles, and again, here's my angle, and then here's my angle, here's an angle, then here's my other angle, and I say that this is my side right here. Notice it's with one little arc, and so if I put it here, right, technically it is on the non-included side, but notice it's with the two tick marks. So these are not congruent. So they are not congruent. In order for them to be congruent, I'd have to erase this guy and move it next to this guy. So again, it has to be kind of in the placement, and now I can kind of take that away, and now it becomes congruent. So where those pieces are is very important. Okay, and then our last one is HL, and that stands for hypotenuse leg. So we only use this one when we're dealing with a right triangle. Okay, hypotenuse leg you'll never use with anything else. So again, if you have the hypotenuse and you have a leg of a triangle, then automatically our two triangles are congruent. Okay. And again, this is when we don't use the Pythagorean theorem, because again, we have no numbers with this. So those are your 5 statements. So once again, all 5 written out. These are called congruence theorems, right? So SSS, SAS, ASA, AAS, and HL. So your goal now is to think, can these triangles be congruent to each other? And kind of use your process of elimination. Ask yourself if it could be any one of these 5 things. And if you say yes, then our triangles are congruent. If we say no, then we don't have our triangles are not congruent. Okay. So what I want you guys to do is take a look at our first example. And again, pause the video try to make a guess of what you think these triangles are going to be. So with postulate, postulate is just a fancy word for theorem. So theorem, can you use to prove that these triangles are congruent? And again, I'll draw little arcs are a little hard to see. Tick mark there, 2 tick marks here, 2 tick marks here, and a tick mark there. Okay. So based on this, I'm going to go through process of elimination. So side, 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 it cannot be because I don't know my third side. Okay. Angle, side, angle. I don't have 2 angles, so it can't be that one. Side, angle, side. Now I do have 2 sides, but notice that my angle is not in between. It needed to be here, right? So that leaves D. This is not congruent. So based on what I see angle, side, side, or I see side, side, angle, or angle, side, side. Again, the order doesn't matter. The biggest thing to remember is there is no S in geometry, right? So ASS or SSA is not a theorem that we use. Hopefully you guys got a good chuckle out of that. All right, let's try example 2. What do you think, what postulate or which theorem, use the word theorem, can you use to prove that these triangles are congruent to each other? Again, pause the video if you need it. Okay, so I'm wondering if you guys had said hypotenuse leg. If you said hypotenuse leg, unfortunately, you are not correct, because the biggest thing you have to know is you have to know the hypotenuse. We have no idea about this hypotenuse. Okay, so we actually are only given our 2 legs, right? So it cannot be our hypotenuse leg, right? But notice that it is a right triangle. The angle is in between our 2 legs, so side, angle, side, side, angle, side. B is our answer. All right. Let's try another one. And postulate or theorem can we use to prove that these triangles are congruent? This one's a little tricky. All right, think about what you're given. And pause the video if you want some extra time. Right? So based on this, I do have an angle here. I have an angle here. I got another angle here, another angle here. So I have 2 angles. So I can immediately cross off B. So I notice that my side is not in between my 2 angles, so I don't know anything about these 2 sides. So I'm going to cross off C. So there is one that actually will work, and it is A, angle, angle, side. So again, if I go angle, angle, side, I don't know anything about this side. I don't know anything about this side. The only side I actually know is this one, okay? The one that I'm highlighting. And this side is in both of your triangles. So if I separated these 2 triangles out, right, and I made something that looked like this. Again, here's my angle, a double angle. Again, I know picture is not very good, but this side right here, right, that I'm highlighting yellow, and this side that I'm highlighting yellow, right, technically we're together, so technically they are congruent. They have to be the same exact thing, right? This is a specific type of property. It's known as the reflexive property, or you can say line segment is congruent to self, right? Either one is perfectly fine, okay? All right, let's go ahead and let's try a couple more. So what I want you to do is copy these down, and based on your conclusions, decide if your triangles below are congruent. If they are congruent, you're going to write a congruent statement, and the statement looks like this, so it's triangle, and then you'll write a congruence condition, right? So ASS, ACC, don't have to worry about describing the sequence onto each other. All right, so go ahead, pause the video, try these 4 problems now. Okay, so if you pause the video and you unpause the video, you should be asking yourself how we're doing. Okay, so remember everything should map on itself. Now this has an angle, it has an angle, it has an angle. 40, 110, 30 degrees. All my angles match up. But again, I had SSS to choose from. I had SAS to choose from. I have ASA. I have AAS. And I have hypotenuse leg. Unfortunately, right, I'm not given anything with AAA. So this one is not congruent. There's not enough info. Not enough info, right? We need to know at least something with our sides, okay? So, we can't say that. All right, let's look at B. Okay, so I see that I have an angle of 10, and I have an angle of 10. We'll color coordinate it for us. I have, another angle of 150, another angle of 150. And I also have a side, okay? So I got a side of 58.5, 58.5. So notice that, again, two angles, and so I'm looking at one of these, and my side is outside of my two angles, so it's not in between my 150 and 10. So that must mean that this is AAS, right? So again, this is your condition. And so a congruent statement. So let's take my top triangle. And it doesn't matter which letters you start with, right? So C, R, D, all right? So notice that C, right, doesn't have an angle. Down here, which letter doesn't have an angle? That would be your Y, right? So R is my second letter. Notice that R matches up with 150, so W matches up with 150, so I put the W next. And then notice that D is the last letter and with 10, and B is our last letter, so we match up with that. So anytime we say our triangles are congruent, right, this is a statement, right? And I want you to think of this as like the reason, right? Why do we get to say our statement is true? All right. So let's see how we're doing on C. So for C, the first thing that I notice is I got an 80 degrees, got an 80 degrees. I notice 150, and I notice 150. And then these two angles are not the same, so I have to do a little bit of work. So if I say 180 minus 80 degrees minus 35, if I do all that, I'm going to get 65 degrees. So I'm going to put a little 65 in there. And now I notice that that is also 65. So this, let me color coordinate it. So 65 and 65. Okay, so again, based on this, I see that 150 is in between 80 and 35. This should also be 35. So between 80 and 35, that means that 150 has to be up here. So it needed to be here. So they are not, so even though we have all three angles the same, we have a side the same, they are not in the same position, right? So this, again, is not congruent. Okay. All right. So let's try our last one. Right? And again, I noticed that we are missing an angle, so I'm going to go ahead and do 180 minus 105 minus 55, and this guy will give me 20 degrees, okay, which means that this guy would be your 55 degrees. Okay, so notice that 4.2 is on the line of 20 and 55, and it's on the line of 20 and 55 on both of your triangles. Okay, so there's for this one, right, you can actually say two different things. You can actually either say angle, angle, side. And if we use angle, angle, side, we're using either 105, 55, or we can use the 105, 20. Or if we don't want to use that, let me change my color up. we could say that it's angle, side, angle, and that means that we're using the 55 degrees and the 20 degrees. Again, we're thinking about how we're using it all together. Either one doesn't matter, your statement. So if you picked either one of those, congratulations. But let's see if we got our statement correct. So again, I'm going to pick a triangle A, and I'm going to go to C, and I'm going to go to D. Now, I'm talking about this triangle, A, C, D. So I'm talking about this one on the left-hand side. So A would be your 55 degrees. So that means that your C on your second triangle down here, right, would match up. Right, these two match up with each other. I went from A to C, so that means that these are all switched. And then what's across from D is 105, and B is across from 105. So A, C, D, and C, A, B. Okay. If you have any more questions in regards to this, I will put up a few more videos on Google Classroom that you guys can use Khan Academy to help you.